Hey, it's Chuck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth. We're Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. It is showtime, and welcome into Buckeye Huddle Primetime. Appreciate you so much for joining me from a cooking hot Buckeye Studios. Does anybody else have a spouse who's always cold, and they putz around with the thermostat nonstop? We're hot, we're cold, we're hot, we're cold. I can't stand it. I'm burning up down here. Anyway, appreciate you guys for joining me over here at Buckeye Huddle. On tonight's show, listen, some of the best teams in the Big Ten might not make the postseason simply because the schedules are so much harder than other teams in the Big Ten. We might see some real cannibalization in conference this year. We got a combination of these really great teams at the top, then some real quality teams, and then a pile of cream puffs. So it's very possible for a team to kind of skate through and get a pile of cream puffs and not many of the big time teams. And I don't really like the way this is shook down. So I have broke down the 10 contenders in the conference, and we're going to go through their schedules. I ranked them. I want to show you how I ranked them. I think it's a pretty fair system. And there are a few teams that I think got a pretty easy path to the playoff. Conversely, a couple very, very hard. In addition to that, the Big Ten, Ross Bjork, Tony Petitti, supporting the 2014 playoff, a leaked memo that comes out through ESPN, leaked. I say that loosely. It was given to ESPN to float to the public. Want to talk about that. Want to show you the format that they want to use for the 16 and then the 2014 playoff. You couldn't make it any worse, man. These guys are really something. It's not just as if the 2014 playoff isn't bad enough and nobody wants it, but the 16 team playoff, which everybody's kind of like, yeah, okay, I can handle that. The way they formatted this thing is unbelievable, but we'll go over that. Let's all please like the show. It's a rough time. It's a rough time, guys. The views are low. Creators are grumpy. We can't even stream on Twitter tonight. There's something wrong with Twitter, the Twitter streaming. So let's get this puppy going. Hit that like button. We start today with the Columbus Aviators, and I want to know if you guys are planning on trying to get into this. Now, I'm going to say, I'm going to try to get into this. I'm going to try to watch the UFL because we got a team. We got the Columbus Aviators, and their uniform has been unveiled today. And here is the Columbus Aviators uniforms. Now, the colors are Tennessee Titans colors. They got the dark blue, they got the baby blue, and then they got the red. And the logo itself, I'm not thrilled with. I don't really love the propeller through the logo. I don't know. I think it's kind of cheesy. You got the C with the wings. I don't know. It's all right. I do like the tie-in of Aviators, but there are a lot of teams in this league that have really cool, mean-sounding names. Aviators isn't very mean, but all in all, I dig the uniform. I dig it. Here's the whites here. I don't like the font. I don't like how they've done the font shadow of the numbers, and I'm not crazy about the shoulder striping. Not crazy about that. I do like the striping on the pants, though. That's pretty hard. So that's what we got. Let me know what you think of the uniform, and let me know if you are going to try to follow this team. At least check it out with Ted Ginn coaching. The older Sayin brother is the quarterback. We got G. Scott. I think maybe Matt Jones is playing too. Maybe. I think I might have heard that. Might be making that up. Not quite sure. I was looking around for an Aviators helmet. Obviously, they're not for sale yet. I did find a guy on Twitter who has 3D printed his own. So I'm going to get a hold of him and see if I can get a 3D printed Aviators helmet. But I bought 2 new helmets today for the studio. I got Indiana because I wanted to balance out. I think I have 9 SEC, 8 Big Ten, 3 ACC, and I wanted to balance it out. And I figured, all right, I have to get Indiana now. There's no excuse to not get Indiana. They're a national champion, and I got to have all the best of the Big Ten over there. I've got Ohio State several times over. we've got USC, we've got Oregon, we've got Penn State, we've got Nebraska, Wisconsin, even Washington, Michigan State. And then I did something that I said I was never going to do. I just felt like it was not fair to represent the Big Ten without one of their best teams, as we've kind of got a war going on behind me here, right? There is a war going on behind me. We've got all the SEC's best. How can we have the Big Ten's best without including one of the Big Ten's best? So I did something I said I was never going to do. I said I'd put it back there, but I said I would never spend my money on it. And I did. I broke down and I spent my money on it and I got it. Now, I haven't put it up yet. I assume many people are going to be irritated with me about this decision. I'm kind of regretting it already. You guys let me know. Did I make a huge mistake? Was I trying to be too fair? Was I caring too much about this war behind me? I don't know. Should it not make an appearance in the studio? You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it out loud. I'm not going to say it. Anyway, let's get to our schedules in the Big Ten. So last year and the year before, I ranked the SEC and the Big Ten schedules. I kind of did it by feel. Basically, I would say, all right, these are the toughest games that you can play in the league. Here's the best teams. How many of these teams, like do you play 3 of these tough teams? Do you play 4? And I just kind of went by the tough games, then the medium games, then the cream puff games. And this year I developed a point system. So I developed a point system to try to dial this in because a lot of these schedules in the Big Ten are very similar. So for starters, I took the top 10 competitors in the league. And it's crazy when I'm thinking of 10 competitors, I'm like contenders. These are, that's a lot of teams, 10 contenders in a league, but it's really just a little over half the league. So we got our 6 big dogs, right? We got Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana, Michigan, Penn State, and USC. Those who I consider the 6 big dogs. Then we've got Iowa, Nebraska, Washington, Illinois, Minnesota. That's kind of tier 2 altogether. And we got a couple teams that might pop up into there. And we got a couple of those who might drop off. But that's what we got right now going into the season based on the odds. So out of those top 10, who are the playoff locks? Who are the contenders? Who are the long shots? And how do we rank those schedules so that it can be relatively fair? How do we go about doing that? Well, I started by setting up 5 tiers. Every team in the Big Ten was slotted into a tier. And when you play a game against a team, each tier has a difficulty point value. So for instance, tier 1 is Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana. If you have one of those 3 on your schedule, that is a 25-point level difficulty game. If you have a game against a team in tier 2, Michigan, USC, Penn State, that is a 20-point difficulty scheduled game. Tier 3, Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, Washington. That's a 15-point game. Tier 4, Northwestern, UCLA, Wisconsin, Michigan State. That's a 10-point game. Maryland, Purdue, Rutgers. That's a 7-point game. Now, in addition to that, if you play on the road at Ohio State, at Oregon, in tier 1, at Indiana, that's an additional 5 points, which makes that a 30-point difficulty game. If you play at Michigan, USC, Penn State, that's a 4-point difficulty. Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, Washington, that's a 3-point difficulty if you're playing at their stadium. So we have factored in how difficult each matchup is, and we have added the additional points if you have to play them on the road. For out-of-conference games, I'm awarding no points for purchased games. If you purchase a game from a MAC team, you better win the damn game. That's just it. It doesn't give you any points. If you have a Power 4 team in your out-of-conference, I slotted them in tiers. Now, unfortunately, there were not many, but fortunately, they were very easy to slot. For instance, Texas, Oklahoma are on Ohio State and Michigan's schedule. They're tier 1s. Oregon plays Oklahoma State. That's a tier 4 game. They were terrible last year. Duke plays Illinois. Iowa plays Iowa State. So I slotted those guys all in with their corresponding Big Ten tier. And then the rest, you got Penn State, Indiana, 3 purchase games, Nebraska, USC, both canceled their big out-of-conference matchups. Nebraska canceled Tennessee. USC didn't renew with Notre Dame. So we are more and more teams in the Big Ten are going to the 3 cream puffs to start the season. And college football fans, instead of getting mad about this, many choose to look at this through the terms of as if they were the GM instead of the college football fan who's losing the game, can't watch the game, but instead looking at this as though they're the GM saying that's smart, which I'll never understand that logic. But the Big Ten and the SEC have these absolutely pathetic, increasingly pathetic out-of-conference schedules with 3 bye games. We do not need schedules in the Big Ten and the SEC with 3 cream puff games, man. These guys have got to come to an agreement here to get something else rolling. You've got Maryland's, Purdue's, Rutgers's, UCLA's, and Northwestern's and Michigan State's on your schedule already. You don't need additional crummy teams to warm up. It doesn't need to be done. It doesn't need to be a thing. So that's my spiel with that. Anyway, let's take a look at our schedules here, and we'll start with the number 10 team. Remember, the 10 contenders here. This is the team with the easiest schedule out of all the 10 contenders, and we like to call them Iowa State East. That's Penn State. Matt Campbell's first year at Penn State. Matt Campbell's schedule is about as easy as it gets. It is a 122-point schedule. He starts off with 3 cream puffs. Then he's got Wisconsin, at Northwestern, USC at home. That's a big one. Then at Michigan. That's a tough stretch right there. So USC at home, at Michigan. And after that, buddy, they're cruising. They've got Purdue. They go at Washington. That's a tough one. Minnesota at home. Rutgers at home and at Maryland. This guy can lose against USC and Michigan. And if he handles the rest of his business, Matt Campbell could potentially be in the playoffs year number 1 at Penn State. Now, I understand that Penn State had a really crummy year last year and they're turning over, but it's Penn State. And I just, when you see like Indiana's schedule compared to this, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense how these guys got such an easy draw. But let's go to number 9, a team that would have made the playoffs in a 2014 playoff last year. That is 8-4 Iowa. Iowa at 8-4 would have made the playoffs in a 2014 format. They at least play a decent out of conference with Iowa State, but unfortunately that Iowa State team, 22 of their best players went to Penn State. So a decimated program, which makes it a total rollover this year. But they got at Michigan and then home to Ohio State, which is quite a way to start off your Big Ten schedule. Going to Michigan and having Ohio State at home. Then at Washington. Those are 3 consecutive weeks. At Michigan, home against Ohio State, at Washington. And this is one of our easier schedules. They also got at Minnesota, Wisconsin at home, and then Northwestern, Purdue, and then a relatively tough one against Illinois and Nebraska. Just to show you how much more difficult these schedules have gotten in the Big Ten, this is a 145-point schedule, the 8th easiest schedule that there is in the league. And that is a schedule right there. If we were talking about an Ohio State schedule like 5 years ago, we would say, man, this is a pretty difficult schedule. That's how fast things have changed here. When we go to number 7, Burt in Illinois at number 7. And they've been pretty good for a couple of years now. And they got a decent out of conference with Duke. They had a tough game against them down at Duke last year. So a decent out of conference. Then they open Big Ten play at Ohio State. They got Purdue at home at Michigan State. They host Oregon at Maryland, at Nebraska. Later on, they got Iowa at home as well. So a pretty difficult schedule for them. That is a 154-point schedule. And we get to number 6, USC. Now, this is the number 6 schedule, and this one is a pretty banging schedule for USC. I mean, despite removing Notre Dame, these guys, 3 cream puffs, then at Rutgers, then they've got Oregon at home. They've got Washington. Then they got to go all the way out to Penn State. From Penn State, they go to Wisconsin after a bye week, and then they host the Buckeyes. So the Buckeyes get them after they play Oregon, Washington, Penn State, Wisconsin, Then they got the Buckeyes in Indiana. Like, that is a gauntlet right there. This is the 6th most difficult schedule in the Big Ten. Oregon, Washington, Penn State, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Indiana. That is rough, man. If these guys can come out of this thing, potentially a playoff team, they are an absolute legit contender, is USC, with a 157-point schedule. And then we get to number 5. Poor Matt Rule. Poor Matt Rule. And to me, this is karma. This is karma for Matt Rule for canceling that game that, last minute cancellation against Tennessee that he should not have done to try to get himself the easiest schedule he could. And this is what he gets for it. So he can't notice how they've put on their schedule the red-white spring game. Remember, he also canceled the spring game last year, and a revolt from the Nebraska fans. And now the spring game is back. What a putz! But couple of cream puffs to start, 3 of them to be precise. That is North Dakota, the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. That is not NDSU. So 3 cream puffs. Then he's at Michigan State, got Maryland. Then he's got Indiana at home. Got to go out to Oregon, Washington at home, at Illinois, at Rutgers, then welcomes in Ohio State, and then goes to Kinnick to play Iowa. A really, really tough go for the Huskers as they try to, this is Matt Rule year 4 now. Remember, we always heard Matt year Rule 3. That's when they're really supposed to take the next step. Matt year Rule 4, they might go backwards. So let's go to number 4, and that'll be the Ducks. The Ducks get the 4th most difficult schedule in the Big Ten this year. They got Boise, so a decent out of conference, and then they also scheduled Oklahoma State. Now, they're going to be terrible, but at least they got them on the schedule. They start off Big Ten play at USC. Then they got UCLA. Nebraska comes into town. Then they got to go to Illinois. They got Northwestern, who's plucky. Then they got to go to Ohio State and take on Michigan in back-to-back weeks. Then to Michigan State, who towards the end of the year, I think will be an improved squad. And then, of course, their rivalry game with Washington, and that is Oregon, with 162 points, the number 4 ranked schedule. And then we got number 3. And you got to ask yourself, how in the hell did Washington get the 3rd most difficult schedule in the Big Ten as if they had some great year? Washington, for starters, they play their rivalry game, Washington State and Wazoo. I have no idea how good or not good they're going to be this year, but they've also got Utah State, who was a pretty tough out last year. So potentially 2 decent matchups early on. And Eastern Washington is actually usually a pretty decent squad too. So not so bad for the out of conference there. But they've got Minnesota, then at USC, then Iowa, at Purdue, then they're off and they got to go to Nebraska. Then they got Penn State, Michigan State, and they finish with Indiana and at Oregon. That's killer, man. That is killer for the Huskies. And that brings us to our top 2. The Huskies with 178-point schedule. So we went from like 121 points to 178. And we could see everybody was kind of lumped together, moving up a little bit. And from number 3 to number 1 and number 2, we get considerably harder. And we get considerably harder because number 1 and number 2 are Ohio State and Michigan. And both Ohio State and Michigan have Michigan, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Texas, which gives them both another tier 1 game. So very, very difficult schedules for both of them already. And then you add that into the fray. Now, I have Ohio State with a 197-point schedule. I have Michigan with a 191-point schedule. It's really close. There are some people who are saying that Michigan's is harder. I'll tell you why I think Michigan loses, but loses or wins, depends how you look at it. But let's go through their schedule first. The number 2 rated schedule per the Juck on Bucks rankings is the Michigan Wolverines. Now they take on Western Michigan, and then Oklahoma comes to town. Remember, they went there last year. So they got Oklahoma at home this year, then UTEP, then they start off Big Ten play, Iowa at home, then they're at Minnesota. They got Penn State at home. They got Indiana at home. And you can see that that's kind of going to be the difference here in the end. They're at Rutgers, Michigan State at home. Then they go to Oregon and to Ohio State. So we got a plethora of big time games. Oklahoma, Iowa, Minnesota has been, recently kind of a thorn in their side. Then they've also got Penn State, Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, and their rival, Michigan State, their other rivals. So it's a bear. It's a bear of a schedule. And of course, the number one most difficult schedule, the Ohio State schedule, which everyone's very familiar with, but let's just take a look at it. Obviously, you got Texas week 2, open up big play with the Illini, then at Kinnick, playing Iowa, Maryland, at Indiana, at USC, Oregon at home, Northwestern, at Nebraska, Michigan at home. And that is the 197-point schedule, the toughest one in the Big Ten. A lot of people think the toughest in the country. And that's interesting, right? We're talking if Michigan's right up there with the Buckeyes. We're not used to Big Ten teams having considered the toughest schedule in the country. This has changed so much so quickly. And you can also see that the difference, the disparity between the most difficult schedule of the contenders and then the Penn State schedule. Penn State's got 2 games, man. They got a 2-game season. If they win them, they're in the playoffs. And it's just really difficult, I guess, to make these things a little more even. But the Buckeyes schedule is an absolute bear. I love it. But what separates Ohio State and Michigan's schedule here for me, when you look at them, they play a ton of common opponents. They both play Oregon, Indiana, and Iowa. And then Ohio State plays Texas and Michigan plays Oklahoma. So those games kind of wash out, right? Then Ohio State plays USC, Michigan plays Penn State. Who knows? Those could end up being pretty even games. Then Ohio State plays Michigan, and Michigan plays Ohio State. Then Ohio State plays Illinois, and Michigan plays Minnesota. I think they'll be pretty like teams this year. Here's where Michigan starts to lose ground. Ohio State plays Nebraska. Michigan plays Michigan State. Ohio State plays Northwestern. Michigan plays UCLA. And that's where we can kind of see the dip. In addition to that, Michigan with one more of their more difficult games at home. And that, to me, is what makes the Buckeyes take the cake and get that 197-point schedule. And I'm glad that I came up with the point system so I could verify this, because I did go look at somebody's rankings over on 247, and it pretty well matched up with mine up until I think they had 5 and 7 swapped or something like that. But they were clearly wrong. My point system was clearly right. And you guys can let me know what you think. But there is a serious danger here that you could see a couple of teams at the top, not going to be Indiana with their cakewalk schedule, but potentially Oregon, Michigan, or Ohio State with the number 1, 2, and 4 schedule, teams that some people think might be contenders depending on Michigan. Obviously, Ohio State and Oregon is. Some people think Michigan might contend this year for a playoff spot. But that schedule, boy, if they do with that schedule, then we certainly know that Kyle Whittingham is the real deal up there. I don't expect they will, personally, but if they do, if Bryce Underwood gets some good coaching and they take the next step with that schedule, if they're able to make the playoffs or just lose 3 games, because remember, like Ohio State, who could potentially lose 3 games and get in the playoffs this year, Michigan could too with that schedule, depending on who those 3 are. And depending on how good Oklahoma is. I think we all expect Texas will be real good. Will Oklahoma, who was in the playoffs last year, will they be that good again too? They got a ton returning. We'll see. Now, let me pop in and see a couple of your comments here. Oh, we got our Canes buddy in here. He wants a 16-team playoff with no group of 5. I can't stand. Look, I hate it. I hate the group of 5 being included in the playoff unless they make it by getting in the top spots. It just drives me nuts to have this charity spot. And then we got to go watch these games in the first round where Ole Miss is allowed to play Tulane and get essentially a bye week, or the year before Penn State, plays Boise and gets a bye week. It just drives me nuts, man. It drives me nuts. I understand why they have to do it. But it just drives me nuts. uh, John the Bow says, I'm running behind here, but I think Juck suggested that he might put that helmet on display. To quote the show's opening, I don't know what world I'm living in. What's up, Nathan? Oh, whiteout for USC. Yeah, I think so. That's going to be awesome. That's going to be fantastic. Cannot wait. Ethan is not sold on Arch still. Thinks Texas is going to crap the bed. I'm not sure yet. He did look a lot better towards the end of the year. You know what I mean? Don't let them dictate. All right, my boys are not happy with me here. Don't taint the backdrop. After I made that purchase, I thought this was maybe not the best idea. I don't know what I'm thinking here. I let this guy get in my head, guys. I let him, he's like, how can you, nobody's going to take you seriously. You're not objective. You're clearly not objective. Yeah. Cam's on, he definitely will help him out for sure. Cam is a total dude. And, they got weapons, man. They got weapons. Who they don't have is Jamie French. Jamie French's bum ass is up in Michigan. I can't stand that kid. Cannot stand him. All right. So speaking of that, speaking of the playoffs, which our Canes bro brought up, we got I did a show over on Juck on Bucks about this, but I just was watching Ted Carter did an interview today. So Ted Carter did an interview with Dom Taberi, and I wanted to hit back on this again. So an internal memo was leaked intentionally by Tony Petitti and his crew of folks at the Big Ten that would love to see college football burn for all of us to make themselves more money. And they wanted to float this idea. What do they call it? Socialize. They wanted to socialize the 2014 compromise, they called it. The Big Ten's 2014 compromise. And the compromise goes like this. We will give the SEC their 16-team playoff, but only for 27 and 28. They can get their 5-11 format just like they want. And then in 2029, we get what we want, which is a 24-team playoff. We don't need and this is the compromise part, we don't need our auto bids. Remember, he needed his 4 auto bids for his play-in games. We don't need them anymore. If you're going to go to 24, we're confident we're getting our 4, right? So we don't need the auto bids anymore. So that's Tony's compromise. And that format with 24 would go on for 28, 29, or 20, 29, 30, and 31. So for 3 years, 31, the contract with TV ends. And at that point, they can sit down and talk about expanding it further. So that was his compromise. Now, the 16-team playoff, who I think a lot of people who are college football fans and don't want to see 24 have always felt going from 12 to 16 is like whatever, a shrug of the shoulders, not really concerned with it, would rather not, kind of dig 12, but if it happens, not going to make a stink about it. That's the general vibe I get from the majority of college football fans. However, the way they have chosen to lay this bracket out is just about the stupidest way you could possibly do it. Now, with 16 teams, you can go no buys, 16 to 8 to 4 to 2. It's perfect, right? Perfect. You don't got a team sitting on the sidelines forever. But the way they've chosen to do it is to play teams 13 versus 16 and 14 versus 15 in essentially a play-in game in the first weekend. So they're all by themselves playing in the first weekend. Then after that, you have round 1. Then you have round 2. Now, number 1 and number 2, those top 2 seeds, they don't play until the third weekend because they get a bye through the first round. See? So they're sitting for the play-in weekend. Then they're sitting for round 1. And their reward is to sit until the third weekend of the playoff. That's their reward. I wasn't a believer in the bye week being such a massive deal, not bye week, the bye in the playoffs. But that 1-7 record, man, the first year it was 4 underdogs, but you came back the second year. It wasn't like that. And only one of them won. It was Indiana. A little something to it, but regardless, it's a terrible format. Here's what the bracket looks like. I did download the bracket, I think. Yeah. So here's what the bracket would have looked like last year in this 16-team format. Let me pull this comment out of here. So this is who it would have been last year. You had the teams that just missed: 13 Texas, 14 Vandy, 15 Tulane. Obviously they made it, but this would have been reformatted, and 16 Duke. So that's your first weekend, is 13 versus 16 and 14 versus 15. Then your second weekend, these are all home games still. So 2 games at home, 2 home games. So they all play. And then Indiana and Ohio State would have been sitting there until weekend number 3. And that is just about the most confusing way you could make it. Now, if you go to the 24 teams, Rome, they are canceling the conference championship games. But here is what their 24 team conference bracket looks like. Again, no conference championship games. So this is what their bracket looks like with 24 in the first round. So the first 8 teams, the first 8 seeds get byes. So seeds 1 through 8 get a bye. Then you've got 16 teams that all play 8 games in the first round. So 8 games are all going to be on campus. The higher seed gets the home game. Then in the second round, the teams that are sitting there, the top 8 who had the bye, they're going to play those home games at their place, which is great. We get 2 rounds of home games. That's fun. When you look at some of these matchups, they're not the greatest, but it's good football. It's fun, right? USC, Arizona, neither of them are winning a damn, they're not winning 3-4 games. We know that, but it's a fun football game. BYU, Houston, not too many people want to watch that. It's not like appointment television, but whatever. It's a fun playoff game. Who cares? Vanderbilt, Virginia, like whatever. There's a couple bangers in there, right? Miami, Iowa, maybe. Michigan is being covered by Utah right there. I got the graphic is covering Utah. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. There's a chance Georgia Tech could have beat Notre Dame. All in all, they're not great, super competitive games, but they're fun. They're better than bowl games, but that's not the point. That's not the point. While I agree that the playoff would be fun, I don't, of course, the 2014 playoff is fun. That's not the problem. The problem is right now with 12 teams, you have got a really nice balance of playoff drama and regular season drama. You've still been able to retain the regular season drama. When you go to 24 teams, like I just told you earlier in the show, 8-4 Iowa is in the playoffs. When 8-4 Iowa caliber teams make the playoffs, that means the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, what kind of drama are we getting? We're looking at teams like Pitt and Georgia Tech, and we're watching them down the stretch instead of watching like Notre Dame and Miami down the stretch, teams that can actually win. Now our focus is on crap teams who can't win because everybody else is pretty well locked up. And to be quite frank, we can go into the year and take the top 15. What's our top 15? All right, we know a dozen of these teams are making the playoffs. A dozen of them are making the playoffs almost every year. And a team like Ohio State, we just went through the Big Ten schedules. How many of those teams with those Big Ten schedules, Indiana, for instance, could lose 3 games? If they're in 3 games, you're in for sure, right? You lose 3, you're in for sure. Indiana could lose all their challenging games. What are their games? Who are their most challenging games here? They've got Ohio State, Michigan, and USC. Lose them all. Lose them all, you're in, doesn't matter. And that to me is just like, you strip so much drama out of the game. And I actually think that we are currently in a system right now, and it's kind of just happened by luck, but we're currently in a system where the talent is expanded, more teams are now able to win, and it coincided with going to 12 teams. And what you have now is a couple of teams like Notre Dame this year, a team that was capable of making a run being left out. And that creates the ultimate drama for the regular season when there very well could be a team that gets left out that had a legitimate beef to get in. That's a good thing. That's a good thing because you got the drama in the playoffs and you've been able to keep the drama in the regular season. Great playoff, great regular season. Everybody wins. You hold on to some kind of tradition in the regular season as well, but it's just a more entertaining product. And Petiti and his guys think that with 24 or more, you can capture more of the novice fan, the guy who doesn't like college football. You're going to be able to grab him more with this expanded playoff. And it's true. They will be. And as far as us losing interest in the regular season, they don't think we ever will. But they're wrong. We will. We did in basketball. I used to be a big-time regular season college basketball watcher. As the years went on, it was less and less and less. It was all about the tournament. And we'll still watch big games. We'll watch big regular season games, but there will be no drama down the stretch because the drama will be teams that we know can't win. Nobody's tuning in to watch Pitt, Georgia Tech compete for that, 22 seed. It's not happening. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares because they can't compete in the playoff. Tony Petiti does not care. Ross Bjork, right with him. Ross Bjork says he thinks this is the best thing for college football. It's the best thing for college football. I mean, that could mean a lot of different things, right? Is it the best thing for the college football programs to make the most money right now while these folks are employed at the college football program? Or is it the best thing for the fans and the health of the sport? It's clearly not. We all know it's not. But right before I got on here, I heard Ted Carter get interviewed about this, and Ted Carter didn't really like 16. He said, I'm like most fans. I could go back to 4. I would like to go back to 4. Isn't it better for Ohio State if we're at 4? We can win it easier. I'm like, my man, I would have thought he would have been walking lockstep with Ross Bjork. Apparently not. So that was pretty interesting. That was pretty. Listen, MCU Drew doesn't think we had any drama last year, basically zero. While I'll agree that it wasn't super drama filled at the end, imagine what 24 is like. Like there's no, take the drama part, right? You're right now, what you're thinking of is the last couple of weeks. Take it and go back 5 weeks. Was there drama there? Yup. There was drama there. If you've got 24 teams in 5 weeks prior, there's no drama. You just move it back further every time. And the drama gets shifted onto crummier teams. Crummy teams are the ones who have the drama in the end. And nobody wants that. Buckeye Freak thinks the parity in college football is increasing, and we may well see a future in the next 3 or 5 years where we do have 24 that can compete. I think we'll have a tier 1 for a while, but tier 2 grows, and that's fine. And then you expand it. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm with you even, right? If you get to a point where all of a sudden, now there's 5 more teams that we think can compete. All right, move it to 16. Hey man, there's 5 more. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And we got to be able to pivot. We got to be flexible, but to go from 12 to 24 is nothing but a quick money grab, like a patch on a jersey. Like that's all it is, man. That's all it is. So anyway, that's my take on it, but I did like hearing from Ted Carter. What's his call name? I forget his call name. He, he was an Air Force pilot with a call name. Oh, geez. All right, my friends. I do appreciate you joining me on a very slow night here. I wasn't able to get our Twitter stream rolling. So those of you who rocked with me, I do appreciate you guys so much. Tomorrow over on Juck on Bucks, I've got a hellacious film breakdown, one of my favorite freshmen. So be sure to tune in and check that out. And we'll further discuss my ill-advised purchase at a later date. So I appreciate you guys, and I will see you on Thursday. I hope. Talk to you then. Buckeye Huddle out.